Welcome to Pro Practice, your guide to piano mastery. I'm Josh Wright, and today's episode is based on the Chopin Etude, Op.25 No.4 in A minor. This certainly isn't Chopin's most famous etude, but it's one of my favorites. It can teach students a lot of valuable lessons. We're going to go through a whole list of tips and strategies we can use to make your life a little easier as you're studying this piece. But first, I just wanted to start with a few measures of the piece. And this is extremely difficult to master all of those jumps. I actually haven't played this piece in a little over a decade, and you can see I missed a note or two in the left hand there. And I want to start out with that piece of advice. I could have edited that out, what I just did, but I wanted to give you guys the confidence to know that no matter what happens, you need to keep going in your performances. Okay, I've had this go almost note perfect in performances. I performed this a lot as a teenager. I haven't performed it a lot in the last decade, but as a teenager, and I've taught this a few times since then, if it's going really well, you just might be willing to take a little bit more risks. If you are feeling a little apprehensive or tightening up a little bit, maybe take a slightly more conservative tempo. I did a lot of listening to many different recordings before I made this tutorial. So probably my favorite, and this will come as no surprise to any of you who follow my videos, is Daniel Trifonov's recording. But other recordings I listened to were Christian Zimmerman, Dang Taison, Shimon Nering. I think he placed in the last international Chopin competition. Lucas Genusis, he won second prize the year Daniel competed and got third. So don't just listen to the old masters, also listen to a lot of the young new superstars because they have a lot to offer. And there are a lot of varieties so far as tempo. So if you listen to like Shimon Nering, it's... And then I think Daniel's and Lucas's are... I tend to like that slightly slower tempo because it enhances the liveliness, but I mean, the faster recordings are wonderful as well. It's just what you are trying to accomplish through the tempo that you choose. So I've written a list so I don't forget anything. The first thing I want to talk about is staccato sharpness. And with each of these concepts, I'm going to give you exercises. This is going to be structured a little bit differently than other pro practice videos. I want to hit all the concepts first because this piece is so similar throughout. Obviously, the shaping and the rubato have a lot of variety throughout the piece, but the concepts of accuracy with jumps and all these things we're going to get to are pretty consistent throughout. So I want to take you through all the exercises in the first part of this tutorial that I like to use, and then at the end we'll go through it slowly, talking about all of the dynamics and places to exercise a little bit more rubato, and also pedaling differences, and then a couple of differences. I'm using the Chopin National Edition here on my iPad, but I also have this old Paderewski score, and I learned with the Joe Safi edition when I was really young, and I've also looked at the Mikuli edition. I compared a lot of these things, and there is one part that I want to discuss the differences between editions, because as you listen to different recordings, you might get a little confused as to why they're doing a particular line of articulation differently, and it has to do with differences of score addition. So anyway, okay, we're going to talk about staccato sharpness, voicing. We have to be able to have electric tops. We're going to go over how you can get that. We're going to go over melody connection and pedal use. I think this is something that is often overlooked in this etude. How do we really... That is super hard to do. And how much pedal do we want to use to employ that, especially if you have a small hand versus a larger hand? If you can make some of these connections like this, my hand's pretty large. I can barely make that, so I might employ the use of the pedal a little bit, but we're going to go over specifics on how to do that. Accuracy, that's probably on everybody's mind. we're going to go over a few different exercises that I like to have my students do to improve accuracy. And then we'll go over lightness and reducing tension. We'll go over dynamics, rubato, and then finally at the end, we'll go over increasing tempo. Let's start with staccato sharpness. There are 3 types of staccato, at least that I've been taught and that I've discovered in my life. The first is finger staccato. This is just kind of where you pluck the keys. The next is wrist staccato. The next is arm staccato. The only time I ever use arm staccato is in huge passages, like the Liszt Rhapsody No. 6. You need all the power you can get, even in those fast tempos. So I'll use that sometimes in like Tchaikovsky octaves. Those you might want to employ a little bit more arm staccato, but it is more taxing. It takes more energy. With this one being so light, it's deceptive. A lot of people think, oh, I'll just do a nice wrist staccato. As soon as they get nervous and tighten up, though, their precision and sharpness kind of go out the window. They go, and then it doesn't have that same bite that it does. So I want you to combine finger staccato and wrist staccato. So the first thing I would have you do is just go through and pluck these. You can obviously come up with your wrist, but that's not the main focus. The main focus is at the fingertip level. Okay, what we're doing is we're activating the fingers. You don't want to just do finger staccato in here, because if you just do finger staccato, I've seen a lot of students get a lot of wrist and arm tension from doing too much finger staccato and not allowing their wrist to move freely. So it's very important that even though the finger is the mechanism we're focusing on in this exercise, that you allow the wrist to just kind of float. The next thing is I want you to swipe 3 different levels with your wrist. Sergei Babayan, Daniel Trifonov's teacher, I was lucky enough to do about 20 lessons with him over the years, and he would have me do these this was in the Chopin Scherzo No. 3. He had me start with arm staccato, arm swiping, all the way back with the whole arm. As you can see, I'm actually, like, my elbow's coming behind my body. So I'd have you do that. This is... Okay, and then I want you to just do a wrist. And then... The third step is just a minimized version of step 2. Step 2 is kind of this wrist swiping where I'm coming all the way back off the keys. Not all the way back with the arm like I was, but... just doing this, and then just minimizing that. And then I want you to combine that finger action at the key level. And I want you to do that in the left hand as well. Left hand has its own set of challenges, but it has to also be sharp and light. So even though it just kind of looks like my hand's being lazy, I'm actually very slightly grabbing the keys. And just bouncing a little electric shock in my wrist on each of these. One other thing that I want to, before I forget, to explain, if you can think about getting into the next position as quickly as possible, especially when you're practicing slow tempi. We'll get into this with some other exercises down the line, but it's good to introduce right here. See how my hand moves? It almost jolts to the next position. Looks like I have little electric shocks going through my hand, rather than what most students do, which is they're just kind of casually bouncing. As soon as you start to increase that tempo, it sounds great in a slow tempo, but as soon as you start to increase that tempo, things get heavy and tight. So as you practice that lightness and getting into position faster, it can actually hold up in those faster tempi. Okay, the next concept I want to go over is voicing.